Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 74 of Behind the Camera with Andy Games, the podcast where we shine a light on the storytellers, the creatives, and the voices behind the camera. This week, my guest is sailor and author Alison Gieschen. After she and her husband sold everything to embrace a life at sea, they have traveled to 47 countries across 4 continents. During this time, Alison has poured her heart into her craft, writing a number of fiction and non-fiction books inspired by her experiences around the world. If you're enjoying the podcast and want to stay connected, all my links are in the About section, from socials, merch, website, and much more. Hitting follow, sharing the show, or leaving a quick rating really helps Behind the Camera grow. Now, here's the interview. Alison, welcome to Behind the Camera podcast. Great to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm outstanding, thank you, and thank you for having me.
Oh, very welcome. It's my absolute pleasure. So, you are the nautical novelist, which I think is an incredible term to put, but just let's go before that. You and your husband, you sold everything and you're now traveling the world on your boat.
Yes.
So can you tell us about the inspiration behind this? Because that's an incredible way to see the world, and I'm sure it's something that many want to do but only few get to.
Yes, it's such a difficult task that even people who buy a boat and plan to sell around the world, only 10% of them actually end up doing it.
Wow.
So I just can't tell you how difficult it is, which of course makes getting out there and doing it that much more special. But the reason why this even ever happened was that my husband grew up sailing in the Chesapeake Bay with his dad, and I didn't get into sailing until college. And when my parents retired, they moved to New Bern, North Carolina, and lived on the Pamlico Sound. And my mom decided that she was going to be the fastest woman skipper sailboat racing in the Pamlico Sound. So she got there and started racing, and there were no other female skippers. So then she's like, okay, well, I'm just going to be the fastest skipper, period. So this big regatta comes up, and I had a cousin who worked up at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, and next to him was a very handsome young marine engineer who was a 3-time national dinghy champion. And he said to his friend, hey, you want to come down and be a ringer on my Aunt Jerry's sailboat for this big regatta? And of course he said yes. So the two traveled down, and I was there that weekend, and we met, and we raced, and we scuba dived, and we windsurfed, and we canoed, and we got into all kinds of trouble and antics together. And at the end of the weekend, we're sitting in a bar, and he's getting ready to go back to Philly, and I'm going back to Charlotte. And he says, my dream is to sail around the world someday. I said, mine too. Let's get married. So we were married less than a year later.
Incredible. That is incredible. That's such a lovely story. And it just kind of shows that, when you have that like-minded goal and it just feels right, something like that. That is absolutely incredible. And, it obviously sounds like both of you've spent a lot of your lives already around water, that it just kind of feels like a natural thing to just sort of be around and be on the water, traveling and just on a boat.
Well, actually, we weren't around the water as much as we wanted to be the first 25 years because we started a horse farm. My husband worked in Philadelphia, so we bought land in New Jersey and built, because horses were my background. And we raised 3 kids in our horse farm for almost 30 years. And then when our last son was married, we said, you know what, it's time to go. So he made a 5-year plan. And in 5 years, we found our boat, bought our boat, sold our house, everything we owned, and moved aboard.
That's honestly, and after so long of being away and having not really sailed or anything in that time, how easy or difficult was that decision to make, to just be like, right, let's just go bare bones on this boat and we'll just kind of see the world? Because obviously it's on one hand, it's your dream that you have established for such a long time, but at the same time, giving up that kind of familiarity from the last 30 years.
It was very difficult. I'm not going to say that I didn't have my moments where I cried and, wondered if I could actually do this, because I was so close to my kids. We weren't one of those families where, we fought all the time. We did everything together. My kids were very close in age. And because we had a farm environment, all their friends were always at our house. So we were just like one great big family with all their friends. So there were some pretty strong apron strings to cut there. And I had a really hard time with it at first, but now it makes coming home that much sweeter. And I now have 5 grandchildren.
Amazing.
So they all call us Grandma and Boat Grandpa, and they each have a map of the world on their walls in their bedroom. And I send them a postcard from every country we visit, and they put a little pin, so they're learning geography. And I send them postcards with facts about the countries we're in. So I'm giving a little piece back to my family as we travel.
Yeah, of course. And that's incredible. So, and you guys have visited 47 countries over 4 continents. Am I right in saying?
Over 4 continents. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's some going. Like that's incredible. So what are the continents, first of all, that you guys have been to?
Well, we started in North America, and we've been to Europe, and we've been to South America, and we've been to Asia.
Amazing. Like
Turkey. Through Turkey, yep.
Oh, yes, I see. Yes. That's incredible. Like, and what's the sort of Pacific crossing like? Because it seems just like a sort of really big journey. And I specifically ask you that because of you mentioned to me a few months back your journey to French Polynesia being eventful and almost catastrophic.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. We've crossed the oceans 4 times now. So I thought the worst was behind us, because our very first attempt to cross the ocean, have you ever seen the movie A Perfect Storm?
I haven't, no.
Well, it's the concept of 2 storms, pushing the waves together and creating untenable conditions. And we hit that the first time we tried to cross the Atlantic, and had $14,000 worth of damage to our boat and had to turn around. So 5 days later, we ended up 20 miles from where we started, back on the East Coast. We were trying to get to the Caribbean. So I thought that the worst was behind us. Like, okay, it doesn't really get any worse than that. Well, worse is always subjective. So our Pacific crossing would be our longest to date. It's over 4,000 miles. And we started off and we tried to leave Panama 3 times. 3 times we had everything ready, set out to sail across, and something happened that we had to turn around. A couple times it was our engine. Another time it was, I don't remember what the other time was. So anyway, it was our 4th time setting out, and we set out, and the very first thing that happened is my freezer broke. And my freezer had like 30 days worth of, frozen foods and meats and everything in it. And so after the first week and a half, I had to throw all that food into the ocean, because it wasn't going to, last in the refrigerator after a couple of weeks. So I could deal with that, though, because I have a lot of, dried food and canned food, and I knew I'd starve to death. So then we had our jib, which is our big sail out front, rip, and we're going downwind, and it's a very important sail. And the reason it ripped is because we just had a brand new forestay put on the boat, which is what holds the jib between the deck and the top of the mast. And the person that installed it didn't put Loctite in all of the screws holding that together, and all the screws fell out. So we had paid $7,000 to have this piece installed. He didn't put Loctite in it. So the whole thing started coming apart. It ripped our sail, and we had to make an emergency landing in the Galapagos Islands. So that's kind of a double-edged sword, because we really wanted to go to the Galapagos. They're one of the most, really, really high on our bucket list of places to visit. But we couldn't afford to go there because it was $4,000 just to drop anchor.
Oh,
you have to pay all these fees, and it's a lot of paperwork, and you have to have an agent. However, since we had an emergency, there's a maritime law that says no country can turn you away if you have emergency. So we had an emergency, so we pulled into the Galapagos and dropped anchor in a harbor at 3:00 in the morning, and went through all the procedures for being an emergency boat. And the great news is that we got to spend 21 days in the Galapagos getting everything fixed. And we got to go scuba diving with the hammerhead sharks and visit several of the islands. So it turned out to be, this huge blessing in disguise. So we thought we were all set to go. And after we left the Galapagos, that's when the proverbial hit the fan, because we had paid $600 to have our sail stitched back together. It was back up, and Dan had to put 40 screws back into that forestay with all the Loctite in it. He got that all, sheared up. And then in the middle of like 25, 30 knot winds, our sail ripped again. It got all tangled and ripped. We couldn't figure out what was going on. The whole bottom of the unit that this man installed fell out. So now we had to take the sail down, couldn't use it at all. But we still had a stay sail, which is a smaller sail, and we were going downwind. So we had our main on one side and our smaller stay sail on the other. And we had a really strong current behind us. So between those factors, we're like, okay, we can still do this. We're still okay. That was until we snagged, I don't know if you are aware of the Chinese fishing fleets that kind of terrorize the Pacific.
Not really, no.
Okay, so the Chinese have this band of between 10 and 12 of these 200-foot vessels, and they put out like a 60-mile net, and they catch everything in that net: whales, dolphins, sea turtles, and the fish, of course. And they kill everything in there. They kill the whales and the dolphins and the sea turtles, and they harvest the fish they want. And they have boats for processing, boats for freezers, boats for launching and pulling in the nets. And if the nets get tangled up, they just cut them and let them loose in the ocean. So for sailboats, and this didn't just happen to us, it's happened to a lot of sailors, they snag these pieces of a net in their rudder, and it's, really traumatic. So we had just passed a fishing fleet, and, in the middle of the night, our boat just lurched. And here we were going like, 7, 8 knots, and they just like almost came to a standstill. And we're thrown off balance, and we're like, we're in thousands of feet of water. What is this? And Dan suspected we've snagged something on our rudder, and our autopilot went off. And our autopilot is extremely important because you don't want to hand steer a boat our size, just the two of us. It would be horrible. So we hove to, which is when you turn the boat into the wind and you back sail the main, and the staysail goes on the other side. It just holds you right into the wind, and it just calms everything. And you start just going gently over the waves, and the wind settles, and you can just take a breather. So a lot of people will heave to, use that tactic in the middle of a storm to kind of get a respite, or if been traveling a long time and you just really need sleep. So we hove to, we went to bed, and we woke up in the morning keeping our fingers crossed. And the waves are still 9, 10 feet. And I did not want my husband going into the ocean to look under the boat, because if he went overboard and lost contact with the boat, I would never get him back on board. So I said, you're not going in. You got to figure out something. So we got our boat hook, which is telescoping, and he put the GoPro on it, and he stuck it underneath the boat, and he's able to see the rudder. And there was nothing on the rudder, but he could see like the scrape marks where something had been attached. So apparently when we hove to overnight, whatever was tangled washed free, because we were no longer moving forward. So I guess the momentum of the waves washed off. That was the good news. The bad news is when we turned our boat back to go forward again and tried to turn on the autopilot, it did not work. No. So we are 680 miles from the French Polynesians, and now we have to hand steer our boat. And I was mortified, and it was so difficult. And the reason it was so difficult is because the net also loosened our steering cables. And it started getting worse and worse. And Dan's like, if we lose our steering cables and we have no autopilot, we have to abandon ship. We have to deploy our EPIRB, and we have to be rescued. So we had one last option. He's like, we're going to heave to again, and we're going to try to fix this. So we hove to, and we spent an entire day where he took the entire pedestal and the wheel off the boat, and we had to go below down into our stateroom, and take the queen size mattress and all the plywood off, and wedge ourselves down all the way as far aft as we could get in the back of the boat, these big pieces of equipment. And we had to grab the cables around these big cogged wheels and try to tighten them. So meanwhile, the boat's doing this, and we're getting like bloody because our hands were getting jammed against the metal, and we had to hold these big tools. It was exhausting. So we finally got it as tight as we could, put everything back together, because he had to put the whole pedestal back on. Now we're talking, equipment, power equipment to get the giant bolts on and off, and the wheel back on. And we held our breath, and he started sailing again, and it was tightened. It was good. So thank God we had our steering back. So then it was just a matter of hand steering for another 2 weeks, just out to sea. And I could do only 30 minutes at a time because it's the weather hard to steer. And I would count down. I'd be like 30, 29. And my husband would do 3 hours. I'd do 30 minutes. And then every night we would heave to and just let the current take us. We did do about 20 miles at night while we were, resting, because the current was so strong and it was going in the exact right direction. So we get about a week away, and we wake up one morning, and one of those Chinese fishing fleets magically appeared in the middle of the night, and they put 60 miles of net between us and where we needed to go. So we had to we could have gone downwind, but gone like 40 miles out of our way, or we could turn and go upwind and go 20 miles around the top of the net, which we did. But now we're going like sideways to the waves, and the boat's just getting, thrown all over the place, and it was really miserable. And then the magical moment arrived where we woke up one morning and Dan's like, we're gonna see French Polynesia today. Today's the day we're gonna arrive. And so I go out and I put my legs over the rail and I'm hanging on, and finally they magically come into view. And Dan's like, it's there. Do you see it? Do you see it? And I'm like, yeah. Oh, sorry. I just lost all my lights.
It's okay.
And I said, I feel nothing. I have nothing. I have no emotion. Like there was not one shred of feeling left in my body because I was just so emotionally drained.
Yeah.
So we finally pull into the harbor, drop our anchor. We're on the island of Hiva-Oa. We made it. Despite everything, we made it. And we were exhausted, so we went to bed that night. Next morning, there's like 8 o'clock in the morning, there's a knock on the hull of our boat. And there's a little skiff next to us. And the man goes, you have to leave. You have to leave. We're like, what are you talking about? He goes, there's a tsunami coming.
Oh my
and everybody has to leave the harbor. So they kicked all of the boats out in the harbor and they made us go out to sea again. So we have no autopilot. We were still exhausted and everybody else is just clicking their autopilot and just hanging out for the night. We had to sit there and hand steer again all night, the night after we finally get there. And then the tsunami came and it was an absolute non-event.
Oh,
and then they put us back in the harbor. But it's like, what are the chances of, you have this awful crossing and then you throw a tsunami on as icing on the cake? Really?
Yeah, like, it's almost a good thing that you probably didn't feel anything at the time as soon as you seen it in the distance, because it's almost as if it was like, that couldn't be the worst thing to happen. What else is kind of, like, okay, so after the fact, was French Polynesia worth it? Was it as good as you had thought when you'd set out?
It's absolutely magical. There's just no place like on Earth that we've been to that's as beautiful or unique. The people are so friendly, and it's such a small community. You go to an island and there's maybe 800 to 1,200 people that live there.
Oh, wow.
And there's zero crime against visitors. Like there's no crime. There might be a little bit of petty theft in between them or, controversy, but they welcome you. They bring you into their homes and they feed you. They bring you gifts of fresh fruit and pamplemousse and limes and papayas and bananas. And they're just the kindest people.
That's incredible. I'm glad it was worth it, because like that is, I can't even begin to imagine that kind of experience. How long were you on the water for from when you left? And like, obviously, take away 3 weeks in the Galapagos out of it. Like, how long were you on water for between the States and French Polynesia?
I think it was 28 days.
Oh, okay. Wow. Then even still, factoring in Galapagos, that's 7 weeks, really.
Really, yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
But we did just meet a couple, and it took them 57 days. So we felt very fortunate being in 28.
I was going to say, if you had 28 days with everything that happened to you, God knows what 56 days or 57 days must have been like. With
Well, I mean, it gets worse. There was a guy who lost his mast on the way across, and it took him, I think, 4 months.
Wow. And it just goes to show that the sea, the ocean, it's absolutely no joke. Like, it's and I love being by the water. I love being on the water myself. Not that I really do it to that extent, but like at the same time, like, and something I'm just genuinely curious about as well is, so you set off and that you've got like a 3-4 week journey ahead of you, for example. Like, what's the sort of feeling like when you're out in the middle of the ocean and you can see absolutely nothing but the horizon, nothing but open ocean in front and around you? Like, what's that kind of feeling like? So for me, it sounds kind of cathartic, but like, I know for others, it sounds probably quite hellish.
Well, it's been an evolution for me, because it used to really wig me out, especially after the first experience was being in a bad storm.
Yeah.
to get agita. I'd be like just tense, anxious, have anxiety attacks. And now that we're on our fourth ocean, like we had a really good crossing going from Cape Verde to the Caribbean prior to this specific one. And you don't look out and see an endless horizon. You feel part of your environment. You feel like you're all connected. Like the water is 80% ocean and it's your backyard. And there's no feeling of, oh my God, I'm in the middle of an ocean. There's just a feeling of serenity and peace with the universe and the creatures and the dolphins that come to visit you and the birds that land on your boat and welcome you. And you almost get, it's so peaceful and comforting when the weather is good and you're having good passage that you're like, I could do this for a very, very long time and be totally happy. Because I mean, you're just in your own little environment, and yes, you have daily chores. You have to cook, and you have to clean, and you have to, you know, keep the sails trimmed and do whatever. But it's such a unique feeling. Like it's really hard to describe, but you just feel like you could stay there for forever and just be at peace with everything because there's nothing bad happening. There's no controversy. There's no noise. It's just very peaceful.
Yeah, that is beautiful. That's kind of what I was hoping to hear, not gonna lie, because I just love the sound of it myself. Like it just sounds incredible, you know. So and obviously, you know, you are a nautical novelist, so you've taken a lot of your experiences before and put them into your literature. What fascinated me was the fact that you have a mixture of kind of everything from fiction to nonfiction to realistic. Was it realistic fiction? I read for one of your children's books. So like, could you sort of tell us the inspiration behind you becoming a writer? Like, was this something that you did beforehand, or was this sort of fully inspired by your time on the water?
Well, I was a teacher during my land life, besides being a horse farm owner. And I started out in high school English, and I didn't like it because every kid that walked into the classroom hated English class. It's really hard to motivate people that just don't want to be there. So then I got talked into a friend of mine was a principal at a school, and she had a job in the third grade. She's like, Alison, come apply for this. I'm like, okay. And that was my niche because I developed a writer's workshop where I went in and inspired children to love writing and to be creative. So writing was always important for me and something I love to do. And I actually wrote my first book, you know, well before we left land. This was back in the 80s. But I didn't have time to write much as when I had my land life between my teaching and my horses. So being on the boat, I mean, that's the perfect opportunity to write because I've got all the time to sit there at my computer, plus the experiences that I've had. It's just so much fuel for writing, like you just can't even imagine.
Yeah, of course, because I understand one of your books is The Seven, where it is the fate of humanity is decided between humans and horses. So obviously it's you're combining your land life, as you put it, which, by the way, very incredible way to put it, your land life. I love that. And is there an element of your sea life as well in that book, and you've turned this into sort of like a fictional story?
Well, it's about seven humans from seven different places around the planet, and I either have a personal connection to the person or the place. So there's some bit of reality for each of the characters and why I chose them. And it's actually almost a historical fiction in that all of the cultures are real. I highly researched the cultures, the history of these people and and where they live and their environment and their occupations. So it's actually a learning experience. You're just taking a journey to seven different places you probably really haven't heard of or don't know about. And you learn everything about the history and the cultures and the people who live there. And of course, I had to have a sailor in the story. And I had to have horses. And so the horses are actually looking into the hearts of human to decide if they are appreciative of the gifts of the earth, because with seven, there can be no tie. So each human has an encounter with a horse, and the horse can see inside their heart and their soul and decide if they appreciate the gifts of the earth. And then Judgment Day comes, and it has quite an unusual ending. That's all I will say. It's a book where you kind of, there's a lot of that's going to cause you to think a lot about different things you probably haven't thought about. And it's kind of about the redemption of humanity. So it's a feel-good story.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I quite like the fact that you put like seven people from seven different cultures in as well, because I kind of think that it's sometimes almost lost on people, well, other cultures in general, like, and just how other people live their lives. And some are a lot more simplistic than others, you know, like, and I'm sure you've experienced this by, in all of your travels, you've probably been to some places where it's just, you know, well, take French Polynesia, for example, you know, you have just
Exactly.
this very small sort of tight knit community. There's probably a lot of people just living off the land, and it's, they don't need anything else other than what they have. And like, you compare that to something like the US or the UK, which in comparison is like incredibly material. Like, it's
Yes.
just, you know, it is. Is as something that is personally fascinates me, just sort of seeing how other people from different cultures live. And like, what sort of then cultures are these, cultures that you have sort of spent time in yourself, or just researched and sort of had some experience in?
Both.
Mm-hmm.
There's one from a character from Africa, which I had not been there, but my niece lived there, and I learned a lot through her. But what I love most about the story is when it comes down and all these seven people are together, how humanity is all the same.
Yeah.
Like, we may be all different in our materialistic values or how we live, or, but when it came down, these seven people all realized that we are the same, and working together makes us stronger. So it's a really, like I said, a good story about bringing humanity together and what we can achieve when we do that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's like an incredibly important message, because you take all the cultural differences aside, like, what is left, and that is just humans
Yeah.
as we are, isn't it? You know?
And too much of today's society is separating people and pointing out their differences and their skin colors and their religions and everything. And these people all had different skin colors, different religions, different backgrounds. And yet, when they all leaned together as one, it was just absolutely amazing. And it's the funny part is when I write, I don't know the ending to my stories, and I don't even know how the story is going to unfold. I sit down at the keyboard, and it's just like a movie playing in my head. And I just get so excited at certain parts. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. You know, I write it down. And the ending to this story absolutely blew me away. And I couldn't see because the tears were pouring down my face as I'm typing it. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so amazing. So, and it took me by surprise. It's like I just had no idea what was going to happen until I actually typed it.
Of course. I think like, I spoke to like a lot of writers before, and I love like hearing about like people's writing processes like that, because it's always very different in terms of, some people are like, I have this structure from A to B here. This is how I'm going to do it. And I will work on everything like my character development, this, that, and the other. And then on the other side of that, you get people who are just like, I have these ideas. I put them all down on a page, and I just kind of fixed it up as I went back to it. Like,
Yep.
because, and I like both sides of that, but I think I prefer the sort of spontaneity that comes with ideas and putting them down on a page, because I kind of feel like, you know, if I was to put myself in those shoes, it makes it more exciting, because imagination is limitless, and you're thinking of these new ideas. And obviously in your case, you know, you're out in the sea having all these experiences that you can put in, like, and surely you're not short of the experiences that have happened in your time.
Yes, and a lot of the description of was from the places I've been was just a visual image of, you know,
Mhm.
standing there and describing what I saw around me. Like the Algarve is one of the locations, and it was a very beautiful place that we spent 5 months there, and
Wow.
it inspired me so much. It had to be one of the places in my story.
Incredible. Yeah. It's not somewhere I've ever been, but my family have been there, and it looks incredible. Looks
Yeah.
incredible, you know. So on the sort of topic of your experiences, you know, your book, Riding the Waves of Reality, Tales of Turmoil and Triumph, that's based on the first 4 years of your journey. So what can you tell us about that then, in terms of the experiences that you had and put into the book?
Well, it starts from our decision to sail around the world, so it describes that and the turmoil of selling everything, finding a boat. Boat shopping is so hard. We had to travel all over the country to
Wow.
find a boat, and we were actually out of the country, Martinique, because we were looking for a specific brand of boat, and there's only 50 of them made. So there would be pop up in different parts of the world, and we would have to decide if the thing was every one of them sold before we got there.
Mm-hmm.
So and finally one popped up that was close to us on the East Coast, and that was the one that we nabbed. So we felt like we were really lucky. But it describes that whole process, and what it's like to cast off those dock lines and that feeling of finality where you're like, this is it. This is real. We just cast off the dock line and we're doing it. And then the heartbreak of, the first time that we tried to cross, of not making it, and the anxiety that followed, and, picking yourself up by your bootstraps and, finally getting across. And it's just a description of everything that we went through. COVID hit when we were in Ireland, and we got stuck there for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
So we got through that. And then we just released Riding the Waves of Reality 2, which is Mediterranean mayhem and magic. And that's a fun story because it takes place obviously in the Mediterranean. And that was just a whirlwind of amazing things. It was difficult, the worst sailing we've ever been in, because the conditions are constantly changing, and there's 10 different seas in the Mediterranean. They all have different currents and different weather patterns, and nobody can predict the weather. So one day they were told it'd be 8 to 10 knots of wind. We were in 44 knots of wind that day.
Yeah. But you'll find though, if you're only like a few miles away, just to like the west or east or whatever, then it just changes. Like it is, the Mediterranean and around is very volatile, I think might be the best way to put it. Just you never really know what kind of waters you're getting into. I have to ask this. So you were in Ireland for 2 years over COVID. What was that? How did you find that, by the way? Because I live in Ireland myself, so I'm obviously very curious about that.
We probably saw you.
Maybe.
We were on the whole island. We rented a car and drove around the entire island.
No way, amazing.
First time in 2,000 years, all the pubs were closed. It was very disappointing.
What a strange time to actually kind of, if that was your first time there, what a strange time for that to be. And like, just obviously the timing is everything, but yeah, like, and you got to see pretty much everything over that time.
Yes, we did. We had a really wonderful time. The island is so beautiful. And we also spent 3 months house sitting down in Bantry. No, Bangor. Bangor's the one south. Is Bantry up north and Bangor south?
Bangor's up north.
So it was down in Bantry Bay. We were in the home of the former governor of the Falkland Islands.
Oh, wow.
His son inherited the house, and he works between Ireland and Australia. But when COVID hit, he got stuck in Australia, and he had this mansion, and he needed house sitters because he had a dog and a cat that had to be taken care of. So we volunteered to go down there, and we spent 3 months in Downton Abbey. It was just absolutely fabulous.
Wow. Talk about, finding your feet and landing on your feet whenever during COVID, because COVID was a mad time for everybody. And like, I can't imagine what it's like traveling the world on a boat and especially when like the docks kind of closed too.
Yeah. Well, that's why we couldn't go sailing, is because we could leave the port, but we wouldn't be able to go to make landfall on every island, because what they did is they shut down all the ports because of cruise ships. Yes. They didn't want cruise ships full of people coming to their countries and infecting everybody, but the same laws applied to sailboats. So here we are, 2 people on a boat out in the ocean for weeks, no threat of having COVID, but all the countries shut down to all marine traffic. So it was ridiculous, but we had to obey the laws, so we just hung out. We did go home to the U.S. a couple times, twice. Mm-hmm. So we were still able to fly back to the U.S.
Yeah, isn't that such a strange thing where like you kind of have to, you weren't able to sort of, leave on your boat. You had to kind of, air travel was fine to kind of go back and forth, but you couldn't get on your boat, even though that's objectively safer. It
doesn't make any sense. No, you have more threat of picking up something on the airplane and bringing it back to your country than you do being alone on a boat for 3 weeks.
I know, like it's baffling to me, but like, it kind of sounds as though like, you got a really kind of decent end of the bargain with COVID, as if you could really call it that. Like, you get to stay in a mansion for a few months, get to just explore the country, albeit given the time it wasn't the most ideal, but that's incredible. Like that is incredible. Chances are I might have crossed paths at some point in that time. I know. So okay, so out of the 47 countries that you visit, have you ever revisited any of them, or are you trying to just sort of knock off as many as you possibly can over time and just kind of until you kind of can't do it anymore, for example?
Well, we actually have a specific route that we're taking, so we don't retrace it. So we're on a path, and we started in the U.S. and went to the Caribbean, the Azores, Ireland, and then along the coast of, Wales and France down to the Mediterranean. Did the whole Mediterranean, then came out around Africa, went to the Canary Islands to Cape Verde, back to the Caribbean. And then we went to Panama and went through the Panama Canal. So now we have the second half of the world to do. So we don't retrace anything. We're just trying to get all the way around again, all the way around the earth.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, that's it. That's honestly an incredible route to do there as well. I've got to ask, what's the Atlantic crossing like? I'm sure it's probably absolutely nothing compared to the Pacific, but is that just a sort of nice, smooth sailing for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, or?
It depends which way you're crossing. If you're going east, like from the U.S. towards Europe, it's horrible.
Really?
It's miserable. It's windy. The waves are horrible. You're in a bad direction to the wind, and it just sucks. I just can't put any nice words in crossing the Pacific and the Atlantic in that direction. Excuse me. However, crossing the Atlantic going west was our best crossing ever. And if you're on a well-provisioned piece of driftwood, you can go across the Atlantic in that direction.
Wow.
The wind is going in your direction, the current's going in your direction, and it's lovely. And the Pacific could have been better, but it was just fluky for a number of reasons. And we did have friends that, had a much better time crossing it than we did. And then there's people who've had it a lot worse crossing than we did. So it's subjective to some degree.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of a matter of luck, and also picking the right time of year to cross, because definitely have better weather in certain seasons than there are in other seasons.
Yeah, of course. Especially if you're like Europe side, like the UK and Ireland around this time of year, you're not in for. I don't think you're in for a good sail at all. Regardless, it is like I can tell you right now, as we're recording this right now, it is. We've just come out of a storm warning, basically, and now really, I mean, I don't know if it's because the UK is such a small island. It's like it was just a bit of wind. It was maybe about 70 miles per hour winds or something like that. It's about
That's a lot of wind.
I mean, I didn't notice it as much. I mean, I've been in my house all day. I didn't really notice it too much, but I kind of a bit enclosed, even though I live by the sea myself, like I'm kind of a little bit out of the way, so I don't really get it too much. But I mean, it was an excuse to not leave the house today. It is to just work from home, so it was fine.
It's a good choice.
Exactly. So just in regards to your writing as well, actually, I just wanted to ask, so how did you find not blending, but the difference between writing fiction and writing nonfiction? Because like every writer I've ever spoke to is always really kind of focused on one, just because the writing styles are so different. But how did you really find going between the two sort of genres?
I have no problem whatsoever, because for me, all of my fiction is based on real things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, obviously, I just wrote a children's book about a mermaid. Seanna just came out. Obviously, that's not real life, except that I'm an avid scuba diver. Okay. So I put myself in her shoes. So all of her interactions with her sea creatures are me living that, me down there doing that. And as a former teacher, I made all of the sea creatures real and facts about them real, and it's all incorporated into the book. So at the end is a glossary with actual real photos of every sea creature mentioned and facts about them. So I'm, an internal educator. So even my fiction books are going to have reality. And for me, it's just taking what I know and putting a spin on it, rather than, I don't think of fiction and nonfiction. It's just me writing.
Yeah, of course. That's incredible. Like, and I think when you kind of boil that down, like it kind of makes the sort of process sound like kind of like, oh wow, like that's kind of eye-opening, because you're taking your experiences, but you're just changing the people involved. You're turning them into characters, and and even if like it probably saves on somewhat of character development as well, because I know character development and sort of how that fits into the story is, from what I hear, it is one of the more challenging hurdles to sort of overcome in writing, because you have to make them real, realistic, give them their human qualities. It has to all make sense. But the thing is, sometimes life just doesn't make sense, and sometimes that's the most realistic thing you can do.
And I'm sure that other people put a lot of pressure on themselves to think about their character development and think about making it realistic. And for me, I'm just happy as a clam sitting there, and I get so excited, and just can't type fast enough to get it all out. So I'm all over the place, and somehow I narrow it down and make it work. But there's really no division for me between my fiction, my nonfiction, other than I have to give the facts in the nonfiction.
Of course. And do you have anything else that's currently in the works? Anything that you're writing, or?
Oh yeah, definitely. So the Mermaid books are going to be a series. Mermaid Tales, Tails. And the next story is about a boy mer person, a mer boy, I guess you'd call him. And he was mentioned in the first book, in Seanna's book. And I was told by somebody I know that writes curriculum for schools that teachers are having a terrible time finding any information about teaching kids about weather patterns and things about the earth and tides and currents and moon cycles. So my next couple of books are going to focus on that. So while Seanna has all the real sea creatures and that kind of thing, my next few books are going to be about, teaching children through the stories about currents and tides and moon cycles and weather patterns.
Incredible. I think as well, when you put that kind of educational spin on it, it's, that it's kind of delivering a very, very positive message. It's going to be very important for, especially because to go back to what you said earlier, being an English teacher and finding it hard when the people who you were teaching didn't want to be there kind of thing. It sort of almost kind of makes that a sort of full circle where now you're kind of doing something, and it kind of entices people to want to learn because they have the visual aids. Everything that is in the book is all real, and you kind of, I guess I can see where we got the term realistic fiction from as well. And I think that's
thank you.
Such an incredible thing.
That's a really big compliment. Thank you. I never really considered that before. So I'll take that as a huge compliment. Thank you.
Very welcome. It's fascinating, just because I think it kind of just shows your passion for writing, but also for teaching, and it's the kind of two things coming together. And I don't think you see a lot of that sometimes. I think a lot of times when people go into writing, maybe just their story to tell, they'll add a few kind of bits in, and that's not to take away from what they're doing. It's still an incredible thing, but sometimes just the messages are different depending on the writer.
Right. Well, I just definitely love writing, and I love storytelling, and it just all works for me, and it makes me happy. And if I never make a dime off my books, I really don't care, because I'm living my dream and I'm happy, and my grandchildren love my stories, and that's what's important to me.
Yeah, of course. And you get to live life on the sea, write your books, and go wherever you want at the weather dependent.
Weather dependent,
yes. Well, Alison, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on Behind the Camera. Thank you so much for your time. I would just like to give you the floor before we wrap up. So just where can the listeners find you?
So I have my author website, which is AlisonGieschen.com, and that lists all of my books. And for instance, I have a story behind the story for each character in the 7. So it tells where I got my inspiration from, and also information about each breed of horse, because all the breeds of horse are, researched. So, and it has links to all my books. And then my blog is sailmates.org, O-R-G, and I update that every country we go to. And I'm an avid photographer, so you get the pictures and the stories about the good and the bad and the ugly on that. And then, of course, I'm on Instagram and Facebook and all the social media platforms. So it's not hard to find me. I'm not hiding anywhere.
Incredible. Well, definitely be sure to check out Alison and her work. And once again, been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Andy. It's been a pleasure.
And there you have it. That brings us to the end of episode 74 of Behind the Camera with Andy Games. Huge thanks to Alison Gieschen for her time and sharing her story. Her journey really showed her love of storytelling and culture, and how her life at sea is truly the heart behind her creative work. Once again, if you'd like to stay connected and support the podcast, drop a follow, check out my Linktree for socials and more, and share the episode with a friend who you think would get a lot out of it. Until next time, take care, stay creative, and I'll see you soon. But until then, peace.